was that Vietnam was supposed to be unified. Now, by supposed to, I mean that the United States helped Ho Chi Minh and other Vietnamese nationalists of all kinds, I assume, help them fight the Japanese occupation during World War II. So Ho Chi Minh had been trained by Western, I think they were French and American, like spec ops guys, on how to fight and how to be guerrilla operatives and all that. So Ho Chi Minh's plan from the entire time, the guy's entire philosophy was to unify Vietnam and make the Vietnamese people live under one government, one country, instead of like how Korea is, split in half. So the whole what happened was, if you ask the North, if you ask the communist side or if you ask the anti-Western side, there we go. What happened? They say that all of Vietnam agreed to hold an election on which government was to rule all of Vietnam. So it's like if Korea just held a peninsula-wide election to decide once and for all if either Kim or the South Vietnamese government is going to rule over the whole peninsula. That was the plan, because in a way the West had sort of agreed in sort of from what I understand, a little bit tacitly, that if Ho Chi Minh fought the Japanese, he would get a unified Vietnam supported by the West in return. Even if the French stayed colonial, they were. It was kind of a weird situation, because it's like, well, we'll give you one Vietnam, but we still want it to be, a Western friendly colonial country, like the South Vietnamese government, like Taiwan, not colonial, but like part of the Western trading bloc, capitalist. And Ho Chi Minh was not a capitalist, so there was that conflict. They didn't have capitalist revolutionaries like Ho Chi Minh to kind of source for World War II resistance. And Ho Chi Minh was he was a very special person. He would have rose up anyways, like Western help or not. I don't mean to say that Ho was only up there because of Western help. I just mean to say that it created a complicated situation where the West had kind of said, like, we'll give you a unified Vietnam, unlike the Japanese, if you fight the Japanese. And so Ho was fighting for Vietnamese independence. And then he found out that, Western independence, when the United States or Britain or France says you can be independent, they mean as long as you're capitalist, right? Of course. Like, you can't. You can be independent, but not if you're just gonna go be all commie, right? Like, that's how it always was. And so there was a conflict. If you ask the North what happened, the election went, the North won, the South refused to concede because they just didn't want to lose, they just didn't want to admit they lost. So they declared the election stolen and decided to fight, and that was the North's casus belli against the South Vietnamese government. They said, well, you agreed to an election to resolve this issue, you lost, and now you're just deciding to fight, you're illegitimate, you're tyrants, we're going to take you out. The South, if you ask the South Vietnamese government or the United States, they say the election was stolen. They say the commies faked it. Like, they just inflated the numbers or hacked it or cheated or whatever. And it's kind of like you can't blame the United States necessarily for defending the South Vietnamese government if it had if Ho Chi Minh was actually just being another tyrant. Because yes, the South Vietnamese government was a corrupt dictatorship, but so was Ho Chi Minh. And so if you want to say that it was wrong to take a side, even though that, the whole world is being taken over by communist aligned or Soviet or Chinese aligned authoritarian governments. So if you want to take a stand against them, you know, It just comes down, to me, it comes down to, was South Vietnam bad? Yes. Was it worse than North Vietnam? No. And so it's not inherently immoral to defend them. Not inherently immoral to defend them from the Viet Cong insurgency, even if you're not Vietnamese. The South Vietnamese government asked for help against another illegitimate dictatorship government. You can help them if it means that authoritarianism won't spread as much in the broader area or the broader world. So you can't simplify it to just America being imperialist. It made sense. Now, I can just honestly kind of just go right into my thoughts on it and how I feel about that. I understand why John F. Kennedy and Adam Kissinger and all of them decided to defend the South Vietnamese government. If you ask Adam Kissinger, he says that if he would go back in time, he would have told JFK to defend Laos, hold the communists at Laos, because Cambodia and Vietnam, like Cambodia and Vietnam were just lost, like you're not gonna, so hold it in Laos and let communism in Vietnam fall, but you hold the domino effect by gluing one of the dominoes, right? Instead of trying to glue the first domino, you glue the third one to the ground, and then you get rid of the domino effect. Because Vietnam and Cambodia were hopeless. That's what he says if you ask him. Now for me, what I think is, okay, if you want to just go into the fundamental morality of, is Adam Kissinger inherently evil for deciding that the United States should defend the South Vietnamese government from attack? Because remember, the United States never attacked North Vietnam. The entire time we knew that actually attacking North Vietnam might start World War III, so we didn't. The United States military never left South Vietnam and never went into the North. And the bombings, even the bombings, were usually along the Ho Chi Minh Trail that they were using. They were violating international borders to use Cambodia's territory as a war caravan, as a wartime supply line, and then people blame the United States for not respecting that border. And it's like, well, they're trying to take out this supply line that's coming from not just Vietnam, but China, So you want to talk about Ho Chi Minh not having outside help? Like, it's a China versus United States proxy war, really. So you're kind of just like, okay, it's two authoritarians versus the others. Ho Chi Minh wanted the Vietnamese people to be free, okay? He did. But he's still a dictator. He's still an authoritarian. That's what matters. To me, at least. If you don't, you can believe in whatever you want about the Vietnamese people, but if you're a dictator, I don't like you. So it's just kind of like, I don't think that he gets to have like a moral superiority as a freedom fighter because he was a dictator and didn't give Vietnamese people freedom, real freedom. I mean, labor unions were made illegal. He made labor unions illegal. Like, you can't just be like, oh, good guy, bad guy. No. Like, Ho Chi Minh was attempting an authoritarian takeover. Like, and yeah, the South Vietnamese government wasn't much better. I'm talking about him right now, and violated international borders to create this, like, foreign fueled insurgency that used incredible, extreme brutality against South Vietnamese citizens, like just random villagers, And so when the brutality happened back, to me, it's like, which side hit the other, right? And so it all comes down to, was that election legitimate? And in my opinion, people can't elect a dictator. Because if you elect a dictator, you're giving up your right to ever elect it again. And so it's kind of like, you're not really voting. Can you vote to take away your right to vote forever? Because Ho Chi Minh is a mortal man, right? So if you're voting, if there was an election, basically, Kim Jong-un can win an election in North Korea, okay? He can. Kim Jong-un, if he held a fair election, he would win easily. Who cares? In my opinion, who cares? The point is, are you an authoritarian or not? So, you know, we could have fixed the South Vietnamese government over time. South Korea's government started out horrible. They were worse than South Vietnam. We could have fixed it over time because you use economics. You use companies and capitalism. South Korea has Samsung. Look what's happening to Vietnam. They ended up going the same route anyways. Vietnam acted like as if the South had won anyways because they know that it's smarter. Like you can't you like it ended up not even mattering. The whole thing didn't even matter in the end. So it's kind of like, I don't think the domino effect was fake. I just think that there was enough time for kind of like money to talk and business to talk a little bit. Like the dictatorships steal and get corrupt, whereas Samsung doesn't get robbed every day. Whereas if Samsung's headquarters were in Pyongyang instead of Seoul, I would assume they're in Seoul, they would get robbed every day. And when they got robbed and they went to courts and the judge would just tell them to screw off because he's Kim's friend and afraid of him. So you just kind of let the economy talk over time, and that's what we did. But the main sin, I'll wrap it up with this. The sin that they made was drafting for the Vietnam War. If Americans want to fight there and they think it's right, that's fine, but it needed to be volunteers only. And if you can't win it without drafting, then you lose, which is the conclusion they came to. That was the main sin, because no matter what Kissinger says about his high level justification, at one point they had to force 18-year-olds to go there and die, and that is when you need to know for sure that it's necessary, not feel like it, know for sure. You just can't do that. They shouldn't have drafted. That's the only real gripe I have about it. Everything else, yeah, sure, defend South Vietnam. It didn't end up mattering though. Like, if they could have seen a future to the portal and know that Vietnam wasn't gonna become like North Korea, Vietnam's not like North Korea anyways. But they thought that it would be, because Ho was like the Kims. Ho was not really all that different. I mean, he wasn't as religious about it like Juche and all that. But the guy was a dictator. The guy was a narcissist. The guy was, into Ho Chi Minh City, right? Not Vietnam People's City, Ho Chi Minh City. So, like, they just didn't know. It wouldn't have been worth fighting at all if they had known. And there was another thing called it's called the Sino-Soviet split, I think. See, the communist world already, the authoritarian world already wasn't acting as like a unified thing. China and Russia had already started hating each other. Like Mao and Stalin, can those two guys get along? God, they're gonna butt heads, right? So that's what happened. So they also just didn't. It's like the domino effect is real, sure, but it's already only China, not the Soviets. Like, it's gonna either be the Soviets or China from now on, instead of both of them teamed up as one unit, and they're gonna conflict with each other. That's why it ended up not being a big deal. It's fine. Vietnam's fine, Cambodia's fine, Laos is fine compared to North Korea. So, my only gripe is to Kissinger and JFK, yeah, you couldn't have been sure. I don't blame you for thinking what you did, but you shouldn't have drafted unless you were sure and you knew enough to know that you weren't sure. You can't compel another person, especially based on the United States' social contract, where, you're not an American for the benefit of America. You're an American for the benefit of your own freedoms. So it's a very, very serious thing to draft people in this country, because you're basically saying that you need to give up your own benefit, your own freedoms, in order to benefit this thing, this group of people called the government. And a lot of Americans didn't even support the war. So you're just going to support this small group of people called the government that are in charge. And it's kind of just like you're playing God if you don't know for sure, but you still draft people. Send the volunteer army, and if it's not big enough, offer more money until there are enough. Like, unless you're sure. World War II, yeah, you can be sure. It's a lending fire. It's a lending your garden hose to your burning neighbor. They could be sure. And so it's fine to draft. But That, that's how I feel about it. But you can't make the Vietnam War as simple as just good guy, bad guy. It wasn't like that at all. Not at all. Really, not at all. Okay? If you think the Viet Cong were the good guys, they were not good guys. Okay? Just look up what they did to South Vietnamese who weren't loyal to Ho Chi Minh. It's not that they weren't loyal to Vietnam, it's that they weren't loyal to Ho Chi Minh, the man specifically. It's not good guys. It's not freedom fighters. They were fighting for Ho, man. You can look it up. Ask them. It's like saying that the Confederates were fighting for Southern freedom instead of slavery. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. Who cares? You know? So it's not good guy, bad guy. The only bad guys are the Americans. First of all, the Americans who decided that it was fine to mess up Cambodia for 50, 60, 100 years to win this war, even though they weren't sure. And then also it's fine to draft people and send them to die, even if they're not sure. So unless they're sure, they shouldn't have Agent Oranged Cambodia and drafted men. That's the only gripe I have against them. It could have been a volunteer army. We offer the South Vietnamese government money and American help to defend themselves, just like we did, but we don't go to the lengths that we did. We surrender the fight earlier. And I think Kissinger, on some level, would agree with that or respect his opinion, or respect the opinion. Is he still alive? Adam Kissinger, you're still alive, 98 years old. Congrats, guy. Uh-oh. Born 1923 in Germany. I think I might be judging a little here, but I know where some of his attitudes came from, you know what I mean? But congrats on making it. I don't think you're evil incarnate, just kind of played God a bit, so. But in the end, he was trying to make the world less dictatorship and more not dictatorship, so there's that on some level. Anyway, thanks for listening to my TED Talk, or I'll see you later. So that's my perspective on the Vietnam War. It's a little bit like, not necessarily one side or the other quite, so it's kind of just an opinion that I think should maybe be out there. So thanks.